Thank you so much for the invitation to come here today to this conference and give a short presentation and speech about what we have done in Denmark on this very important topic. I will do my best to, when I speak English, talk very slow, so hopefully everybody will catch the points. And after the speech, I will suggest that if there is any questions, please just bring them on the board and I will do my best to answer them. But to get back to the subject, it's really a pleasure to be here today. I've been looking forward to meet members of the party up here, because we in the Danish People Party, we consider your party being a very close friend and allies, not only in Scandinavia, but also in the European Parliament. As I understand it, the party up here is quite alone when it comes to handle one of the biggest challenges of our time, the migration question, especially the migration coming from Africa and the Middle East. As far as I understand it, looking on the political landscape, the other parties are not as protective as your party when it comes to taking care of the border question and make sure that there will actually be a Finland to pass on to the next generations. In the Danish People's Party, we were fighting alone for many years. When this subject started, the debate started on the migration agenda back in the 90s, especially in the 90s, our party was created in 1995. No other parties back then in the Danish parliament supported the idea of stopping the illegal mass immigration, especially from countries and cultures that is far away from the way we think in Denmark. Today, the situation has completely changed. Now, even the Social Democrats, they recognize the problems we have in our society and even some of my party's solutions. The bad news is that it took them almost 20 years to get the point that there will be massive problems in mass immigration for our societies. However, the good news that the problem Scandinavia and the Western Europe is facing in these years, they are able to be solved if there is political will and courage. If that's there, it's possible. Even if not, I don't believe the normal people will accept a situation with open borders and mass immigration on the long term. In Denmark, most people today know that if we import a lot of Islamists, at the same time, we will import the problems from the countries they've already ruined. From 2011 until 2015, we had a left-wing government in Denmark. The immigration policies were weakened, and the situation got completely out of control. The socialists back then even gave citizenship to a person who, according to the intelligence service, could be dangerous to the Danish society. In 2015, we won the general election in Denmark, and a lot of things happened since 2015. We changed the immigration laws dramatically, and on 4 years, we have passed around 144 initiatives in order to have fewer migrants coming to our country. And in the month of December last year, we had the lowest number of asylum seekers counted in 1 month for many years. Our policy basically works. And also they have been prevented us from being in the same, and I would say very sad situation as our Swedish neighbors. One of the newest initiatives, it's probably also one of the most famous initiatives, is based on a problem we have in our society with very criminal people coming from other countries and are difficult to be sent back home. We are not allowed to, after they sentence a long punishment in jail, we are not allowed to keep them away from society. But they lost their right to be in Denmark, but the only problem is we can't, because of international law, send those people back again. So we needed to try something new. So what did we do? In the future, those people are going to be on an empty island. We're going to leave criminal foreigners on an empty island where they can't damage the society around it. And they will have to stay there for a long term, hopefully until the day that they can actually go home, because that is the point. If you come to Denmark and you commit hard crimes, you need to be sent back home. A few years ago, this idea would have been completely impossible to get through Parliament. Now, these kind of initiatives are almost mainstream in Denmark. Even the Social Democrats didn't vote against the island. In fact, they didn't vote at all when we voted about this island. Another initiative is that when you now come to Denmark as a migrant or a refugee, we don't start integrating these persons when they arrive. We start preparations on how to make it possible for this person to be sent back home again. And I think it's fair. Of course, we want to protect people who are in need, but migrants and refugees also have, in my opinion, an obligation to go back and help building up their own countries again whenever possible. And for me, this theme might be one of the biggest problems we are facing in our way of dealing with immigration in our part of the world historically. Because the big question is, or the tendency has been, that we have been mixing up groups of people who come to our country seeking jobs or education opportunities with people actually just wanting a better life or people being migrants. We need to keep those boxes apart. Protection should only be given temporarily. So whenever the situation changes, you should be able to go back to your own country again. Now, if you come as a migrant or refugee, you cannot bring the family for the first 3 years. You will need to pay for the transportation yourself, not the Danish taxpayers. And if you need social benefit, you will get a lower rate than others, lower than the benefits given to our own people, the Danes. And Denmark, and this is one of the good news, has signed exactly the same international treaties and law as, for example, Finland. So there is no one of these 144 initiatives who would be impossible for you as long as you have a majority in Parliament to do exactly the same. And our policy has definitely worked just amazing. For the last 3 years, I have been my party's spokesman on justice affairs. And I would say we did great things when it comes to the subject of fighting crime committed by foreign people or foreign gangs. I'm not familiar with the specific situation in Finland when it regards gang activity, but we had some really tough gangs in Denmark. Muslim gangs. A lot of the people in these gangs were refugees or kids from refugees coming from the Middle East or Africa, so a lot of them were not even Danish. Now we put the sentence up. So last summer we started giving extremely hard punishment. Some of them ended up 20 years in jail for being in those gangs. And we also started a new policy about sending them back home, because that is the most effective weapon in these cases. Some of these people, they don't really fear to go to prison. But they fear another thing, and that is to be sent back home to the country they actually came from originally. One of the famous gang leaders, he was actually banned from ever showing up in Denmark again. Also, when it comes to foreign fighters, we really did something to change the things, or the way of thinking about this. Let me put it this way. If you go and fight for ISIS in Syria or northern Iraq, you have nothing, absolutely nothing to do in Denmark. We have had a lot of cases with young people that went to the Islamic State and went there, and when they went there, they kind of missed the safe spot in Denmark. They kind of missed all the values that they actually went to war to kill. And then suddenly they wanted to get back. So now we changed the rules dramatically, and that means that we can actually take the Danish citizenship away from some of these people, because we don't want to have foreign fighters, hardcore Islamists. We don't want to have them back. We want them to stay in Syria and northern Iraq. We don't consider them being Danish or their kids being Danish. The red line for us through all this is to maintain a safe and strong Denmark with all what it needs. We don't want to just be an open country where everybody can walk in, open a mosque, or do whatever they want. We want to have control about what's going on in our own country. That also means fighting the social controls in some parts of our society. For example, this forcing women into forced marriages. We want to stop that. One out of a lot of initiatives has been to ban the burqa and the niqab. We have seen in some areas of our great country that women cover themselves where you're only able to see their eyes, or maybe not even the eyes. So what we did was basically to ban this Islamic terrible dress or stuff you can wear. We don't want to see it in our street. If people want to dress like that and are so hardcore Muslims that they will need to dress like that, they can do it in a lot of Muslim countries, but they cannot come to Denmark and expect it to be okay or normal in that country. Another thing we have passed is a list for religious people that want to come and give religious speeches, because we have had huge issues that in some mosques there has been imams coming in from the rest of the world talking about, really, really evil talk about all sorts of people, but also the Danish set of values. We will never accept that. So now we have a list, and every time there is an imam, or it could also be a priest, of course, that, for example, preaches death or wants to have people joining ISIS or want to commit being violent to Jewish people or homosexual people or others, they are simply forbidden to show up in Denmark. They can't, no matter where they try, board an airplane going to Denmark. And if they try to cross our borders, the border police, if they see them, will find them and make sure that they don't enter our country. It's not an attack on freedom of speech. They can mean whatever they want. But you can't use the freedom of speech to entering the Danish border to spread Islamic hate. That is not gonna work. I know you have a very important election coming up here in Finland in a few days. And I feel very comfortable about the things we have done in Denmark. I know that it has worked. When we see the number of people trying to get into Denmark as refugees, it's very, very low for the moment. And that's a huge part of it is because of laws we have passed in our national parliament. So we can actually change things. People can change their country if they support and vote for the right politicians to get these problems taken care of. And I feel very strongly that the Finnish people, of course, think the same way about their great country as we Danes think about our great country. So I believe that somehow, at some point, the people had enough of this mass immigration. In Denmark, I would go so far and say, I don't consider it being an option that the Dane would elect a prime minister who's not tough on immigration. If you want to become prime minister in Denmark, you need to be tough on immigration. Otherwise, the people would never give you the chance. I know the party in Finland fighting for the same agenda on the immigration policy has a lot of work to get done, especially with the rest of the political system and the political establishment. And that will change because people will not allow things or borders to stay open. I also need to say hello from a dear friend from the European Parliament, and it's because in the Danish People's Party we follow your party very, very close. We are very interested in what's going on in the rest of Scandinavia, especially with a party like ours. And I just wanted to say that the party up here has a very good reputation in our party, and we really hope that we can maintain a close relationship because we enjoy that in the Danish People's Party. I would also like to maybe say a couple of words about our political system because I have a feeling that it's very different from the political system in Finland. In Denmark, it's this way that if you get 2% of the votes, you get into parliament. Then you have 4 seats. And right now we're in a situation, a really interesting situation. We have 4 parties represented in parliament on the right side, and we have 5 parties represented on the left side. And the right side, where the Danish People's Party are placed, is 1 mandate bigger than the left wing. So it's really close race. And the 3 other right-wing parties, they form a coalition government, and the Danish People's Party are the supporting party for this government. It's not a new situation. We've had that before, between 2001 and 2011. But the situation is that now, and that's really good, the Social Democrats are trying to move to the right on especially immigration policy and also justice policy. And that's great, because that means that in our national parliament, the Danish People's Party can actually look to both sides. So when the right-wing governments say, there's something that's kind of difficult for us to do on immigration, we can ask the Social Democrats, and sometimes they support our ideas. So instead of back in the days where we only had one way, now we have 2. So Danish politics has really, really changed within the last few years, and that's amazing. In Denmark, we traditionally listen very much also to the parties that we don't like, so that means that no one in the parliament is excluded. Everybody can get political power. And our party has had a long tradition for the last 15, 20 years, most of the time carrying a right-wing government. So the government gets some of its policy through, and then they pay us on other areas with some of our policy. So I really think that's a good way to do it. And I have very much hope that the political climate in Western Europe and Scandinavia will change a lot in the coming years, because basically no one wants to see their country end up like Sweden. That would be the words, and I can happily take a lot of questions. Thank you very much. Thank you for listening. Thank you.